there's, you know, there's a mix of tenderness and disconnect within that scene. You know, he carries the dog to where he's going. He takes him to a beautiful place. You know, in some ways, there's an argument that he could make that this is a better way than taking the dog to some vet, you know, some fluorescent red room where he'll be put down, but instead, you know, it's just him and the dog. But at the same time, there's a lot of problems, and you know, he does what he does, and then of course the last line is just sort of leaving him with, oh, you know, I forgot what I was going to do with the body. Like, nah, I've done this thing. What do I do? You had a question.
I did. I wanted to ask you about the significance of why you wanted to do it. Well, not only why you wanted to do it, but why you wanted to do it alone without his wife. Because his wife asked, you know, maybe it would be better if I came with you. I was wondering, well, what exactly does it mean that he wanted to do it just by himself?
Well, I think what his wife, it goes back to a problem with the issue of her maybe not understanding. Doesn't want to scare her. It's something that he understands. That sort of thing, I suppose.
Those are an example.
Yeah.
I think the blurry thing was a great metaphor because does he see what he's doing? Does he know what he's doing? What's he focusing on? And is there a question of is he focusing on the right thing? You know, from a technical standpoint, yes, but in a bigger sense.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great bit. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's, you know, the wife is interesting. I mean, it was interesting to me, you know, because in one sense she's Cheryl, she's the woman he loves, she's home. She and Vicar are part of that, like his idea of home. You know, they do exist together in his mind, right? You know, at some point he says, you know, I feel like I'll be home when I kiss my wife and I pet my dog, right? At the same time, Cheryl is shopping in Wilmington, North Carolina, and, you know, the civilian world, and everything that is not a part of the sort of more violent experiences that he's had. And yeah, she asks him if she can come along. And throughout the piece, she's always sort of gently, not trying to push too hard and drive him farther away, but sort of gently trying to get him to allow her access to that. And he's not ready. And he doesn't want to see her doing that. Not see him doing that.
I thought the way you introduced her was interesting, where she's holding the sign that reads, Sergeant Price, now that you're home, you can do some chores. Here's your to-do list, 1, me, 2, repeat number 1. And it seemed like, I didn't know where, why'd you include that? I don't know, it's just, not that it seems odd, it's just I don't know, it's almost like she doesn't know what she wants, because in the next line, he says, I was nervous and tired, and she looked a bit different. He almost doesn't want that sort of relationship right now. And is there a sense in which she doesn't know? I don't know.
Well, there's an awkward, he wants to have sex, I'm sure, right? And she knows that, and that's a part of the homecoming, right? Those sorts of signs are common, and you know,
it's a role to be a performance.
It's a performance, right? And it doesn't necessarily correspond to who they are necessarily, but that performance is a way of sort of reinitiating content. You know, I had an Army spouse talk about how somebody's been away for so long, and they've had all these experiences change them, and, you come back and you have sex, and there's actually a significant emotional disconnect, and then you have this sort of physical connect is the way that you start to, work back to some sense of emotional normalcy. And that tends to be the method, but it's not necessarily, she's like clever and she's got like a cute sign and whatever. She's trying to be what he needs, right? And she's sort of has a small role in the story, but what she's doing is she's constantly trying to figure out, like, how do I, what do I need to help him, fit once more into this, unit that we have once again. And that's her opening salvo. And it's not a bad one at that.
I thought it was a very blatant example of her longing for him.
Yeah.
And then it's like an invitation to reconnect. You can see how, it's one thing if she's saying that to him over the phone, but she's putting it out there in public
Right.
for everybody. You can see how that could be scary if he's already got his own, concerns about his ability to connect. And she's telling everybody, this is what I've been waiting for.
Right. Right.
Not only the sex, I mean the connection.
Yes. Yeah. And it's putting that role in a very public sense and declaring it, which, like I said, it's her opening bit. And he mentions that he had talked to her on the phone and it had been awkward, right? And so, in a certain way, having that sign is a way of letting him know, like, we're still definitely going to do it tonight, and I still want it,
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Like you say that she's like a minor character, but isn't that sort of like what he needs in a sense, like for her to show this self-restraint? Because like
Yes.
we know through this sign that she wants, like Dr. Nutt said, to be with him again.
Right.
But like he can't handle that.
For me, writing the story, like, I love Cheryl, right? Like, I would have wanted to write like a whole lot about her, but it's from his perspective, right? And he's not letting her in. So, the challenge was trying to be able to, and in some of the early drafts, she was too slight a presence, right? And then I sort of made her too big a presence, which didn't quite fit, because this is something that he's working through himself, and he's disconnected at this moment. And so I kept her, I ultimately decided on giving her the extent of the role that she has now, even though, there's a whole world, right, that's going on from her perspective that we don't really have access to, that we can only sort of guess at from the ways that she's handling things. Personally, I think that she handles it really well, right? She does a very smart job of trying to negotiate. Not everything is perfect, but she's trying to negotiate, like, how do I bring him closer?
I think the example that stands out to me is when he shows up after dealing with
McMannigan, yeah.
He shows up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and she just like says hi, and like, she just lets him do that.
Yeah. And she's angry, but he knows that she's angry, and she's angry, but she doesn't act on it. She sort of forces it down, and she's still,
she restrains herself.
right.
Which is different than how Keeley reacts at least once in the Staff Sergeant tweaks before he goes. It is
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, and she says in the New Yorker piece, like that wasn't my husband, right? It's just a different person. And there's the piece in that stands out. She's like, him going, and she mimes him shooting the brother and stuff. It's like, I can't imagine him doing that. Twigs has obviously been through a whole hell of a lot, and is at a very advanced stage of PTSD before he kills himself. But one of the things that Jonathan Shea talks about in his book is the sort of destruction of character, right? That who you are with severe enough PTSD, that sort of sense of self that you have, and the sort of the character that you have that people around you come to rely upon, it just sort of it's crushed once you've got that loss of social trust, and all the other symptoms sort of can radically change who you are.
Is that the reason why it's difficult to write about this subject as a fiction writer, or is that a reason why our narrator is telling the story should be seen as hopeful because his character is so strong?
Right. The fact that he's telling the stories is a good sign. Of course, Twiggs told his story as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he told a part of his story. It's a real challenge.
Finnegan seemed to imply that Twiggs structured his story the way he did, with the sort of happy ending. Like, I suffered from this, but I got better. I mean, Finnegan doesn't say this, but he implies that that was false, that he hadn't really gotten better, and that he hadn't been properly treated, and that maybe there was something about telling the story that way, which was in and of itself symptomatic of the ongoing trauma.
I read that piece. He's not actually he's not going into the experiences that he had that gave birth to the trauma in the way that certain prices. He's telling, like, I had PTSD, I went to these hospitals, this is what happened to me. It's been a while since I read the Marine Corps Gazette piece, but that's as I remember it. And I think that he did genuinely get better, right? But PTSD is not something where, all right, you get treated and then now you're fine. You can go on deployment again. Particularly not a severe case. And also, he wasn't treated until pretty late in the game. And so, the Twiggs piece was sort of a persuasive piece to try and convince other Marines who had PTSD or thought they might have PTSD to come forward, right? So it's not quite the same as what the
Has a different purpose, yeah.
Here the guy is talking about very much the things that he can't get rid of, and he's very sort of quick about those, and he spends not much time telling about, say, Eichel's death. Right? It's like that in the story, but you get much more on sort of the aftershocks of it, right? And seeing Eichel's father.
I guess my question was more about if PTSD has this capability to break down character, whereas fiction, you're trying to build up a character.
Oh yeah, the challenges of writing it.
Yeah.
To write from the perspective of somebody with severe PTSD would be, it's difficult, right? Especially because what would they be telling you? It's a challenge. It's one that I have done work on in other things, but it looks different than this story.
Yeah,
and it sounds different. I mean, if you ever read narratives written by rape victims, right? It